Sophie.
Hi, Sam.
Hi, everyone. And welcome to another exciting episode of the Snack Covenant, the long-awaited Bloodborne edition. What are we
Oh my
talking
god,
about
we're
today,
finally
Sophie?
talking about Blood. I'm so excited to finally talk about Bloodborne after 10 years. So the last time I talked about Bloodborne, you'll recall me loudly complaining about people whose whole shtick is going, it's impossible to understand Bloodborne, it makes no sense at all. So today we're actually covering something that makes no sense at all. It is impossible to understand, and I'm sorry.
What is it, Sophie?
We're going to talk about the possibility that at one point in development, the player character had a wooden leg. Shipping on up to Yharnam to find my wooden leg.
Where do we even begin?
That's a really good question because this isn't really like a story that is in the game. It's like a bunch of stuff that is lying around that sort of coheres into something.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, this is not going to be like we found the cut character wooden leg model. Like, that's not happening. We just have a bunch of stuff lying around that people might be curious about at this point because I think we've covered everything else.
Except for Yosefka.
So Gehrman's got this like prosthetic leg, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you get the quote-unquote the Gehrman ending, your character has their leg missing and they're in Gehrman's wheelchair.
Yeah.
So people were wondering, like, is this because the moon presence captures you and it like takes one of your legs so you can't run away? Is that what's happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there were also like the knights with one leg in Canehurst, and it was so like it's such a significant detail, but it's not highlighted and it's not remarked upon,
Mm-hmm.
which led a lot of people, like including me, to think, is this just a glitch? Like, did something just go wrong with the model and they didn't notice it, and that's why the leg is missing? Because like, this is the same game that's got a floating statue in Old Yharnam. Like, these things do happen.
Yeah.
So we were like, yeah, what is this? And there are these enemies in the Chalice dungeons called Labyrinth Warriors,
Mm-hmm.
who have a kind of Cobra Commander style cowl on. And if you go into the model viewer and you get rid of the top layer of their clothing, the backs of their legs are hacked up, like they've had the tendons cut out.
Okay.
But they do have two legs. So it's not clear if this is the same thing or related or what.
Mm-hmm.
And then the DLC came out. And it included this line about beasthood creeps up the right leg.
Yes.
And we were like, oh, that's interesting because the right leg is the one that the knights in Canehurst are missing. And the right leg is the one that Gehrman's missing. But then in the ending, your character is missing the left leg. So we were still a bit confused.
He's a martyr. He's a rebel. He's a maverick.
That's true. Should also be pointed out that like that ending where you are in the wheelchair, they just do that by folding the character's leg in half. The leg's not actually missing, they're just very, very uncomfortable. Then we fast forward a little more to 2019, and there's the big data mining dump, and we find that there is a cut boss character who looks like they are from Canehurst, and they also have a prosthetic right leg.
Whoa!
So it starts to look like there's something going on here that we don't quite understand.
I understand it. Beasthood goes up the right leg. So if you think you're infected, you're like,
Yeah.
that's it. It's done.
Okay.
We solved Bloodborne.
So then basically what we settled on was what you were saying, which is like, okay, well, there's this thing in the world of Bloodborne where if you start getting beasthood, the assumption is it starts in your right leg first, so you get your right leg amputated to stop the spread.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought, okay, it's just a little weird world detail. We'll just kind of leave it at that. Like it's one of those things, like they mention it once, and it's this weird situation where, from a visual design perspective, they really go all in on it. Like it's a motif that recurs, but in terms of
Mm-hmm.
explaining what the fuck it's actually supposed to mean within the game, it gets one line.
Mm-hmm.
So then it turns out that, in fact, Miyazaki hid the answers in front of us all along.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the art book, firstly, if we looked at the Kanehurst concept art, Sen, can you zoom in on the player character?
Oh my god! I don't need to zoom in. I see it from here.
Yeah, it's weird that this was actually in front of us the entire time and we just didn't notice for like 3 years.
Yeah.
When we found it, we were going over it with a fine tooth comb, and we're like, this is actually like a version of the character that has one leg. This is not
Mm-hmm.
a like an issue with like they haven't done the transparency correctly or they've drawn on some snow and it's covered up part of the character's foot and it
Mm-hmm.
looks like the leg's missing. Like, no, this is like a wholly original like design for the character
Mm-hmm.
that has the one leg, but it's only used in the Kanehurst one for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also where the one-legged statues and probably the one-legged night boss were.
Mm-hmm.
So we're wondering, like, is this something to do with Kanehurst? Like, was this like a covenant or something you could enter into in Kanehurst and you got this like prosthetic leg? But then, like, what would it do? How would it function? We don't actually know.
Right.
And then a little bit after that, I got a comment on a YouTube video where I brought Kanehurst art up. And they said, it's not actually just the Kanehurst artwork, it's in the amygdala artwork too.
Oh.
So check it out.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the little grayed out hunter that they use to give a sense of scale to the amygdala does have one leg.
Mm-hmm.
But curiously, it's a different design. Like, it's got, like, it looks like it has an ankle joint built into it.
Yeah.
And then there's this little sort of, like, dot at the bottom.
Like a wheel or something.
Well, see, I don't know if that is actually part of the model or not, because that might actually just be like when you import a 3D model into something, it'll have a little like center point, like an origin point.
Oh, okay, okay.
Now, you might think, hang on, that's the left leg that's been removed.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. So this also confused me for a while because I'm thinking like, well, wait a second, what's going on? Why is it the left leg in this one? And then I realized you can see that they're holding a pistol.
Mm-hmm.
The pistol is a left-handed weapon. So this image is actually flipped.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the right leg.
Oh, snap.
So then I decided I'm going to look at Gehrman. So like for reference, the Gehrman character, like, he does
Mhm.
not show up in any of the cut stuff at all. The role of Gehrman is taken by this character called Izzy, and Izzy is not just a different name for Gehrman, Izzy is a completely different character.
Right.
He's written as a kind of young, naive, he's like a hunter fanboy.
Like Alfred.
A little bit like Alfred. He's a bit like, I guess the closest thing I can think of would be like in Dark Souls 3 when you rescue Yol. And he's like, oh, champion of Ash, I thought I'd never see the day. Oh, stay safe.
Oh.
He's written a bit like that. He's like kind of fawning over you. He's like, oh my god, a hunter. I never thought I'd see a real hunter. The hunters are all gone now. Oh my god, a real hunter. And because he's a hunter fanboy, he's the one that can fill you in on everything. So he's like, yeah, that's where the church workshop is, and that's where Ludwig was, and this happened, and that happened. And he talks about, like, yeah, there's like a chalice, and they put it in the valley and everything like that. So all that info dump stuff Gehrman does, that comes from this Izzy character. But there's no, like, Gehrman. It's, like, totally unclear where he came from. I've heard but not seen that there's, like, test builds of the game where the final boss is just Gascoigne as a placeholder, because they hadn't actually finished Gehrman yet, even though the game itself was almost finished, because they hadn't really decided on Gehrman as a character until then. You also have, like, people will notice when Gehrman's in the wheelchair and he suddenly stands up to fight you, the model completely changes. So another thing about Gehrman, right, is that we've often wondered what the deal with this Kanehurst-looking one-legged knight was. One of the theories that I think is probably like this is the strongest explanation for it is that that character's moveset got translated to Gehrman. Because if you look at it, it's like a character who has the one wooden leg, and their weapon is a very long, like, halberd thing. So you can see how you'd be able to kind of Frankenstein that into a one-legged guy with a scythe.
Yeah.
And, like, that sort of explains a bit about how Gehrman moves, because sometimes he's limping like he's got this very crude wooden leg that doesn't have an ankle to it. But then other times he's like flying around and jumping in the air and stuff. And yeah, the fight does take place in the hunter's dream. He's empowered by the moon presence, etc., etc. So we kind of assume like the limping movement that Gehrman has when he's holding the scythe is actually originally from that knight who would be limping while holding the halberd in a similar way.
Okay.
There's just a lot of oddness around him. You'll notice that like the narrow-minded man in Yharnam is wearing part of Gehrman's set. What we're getting at is like Gehrman, the guy who starts off the whole like, what's the deal with these missing legs thing?
Yeah.
No one really seems to understand how he's put together. So I decided, I need to extract this model and put it in Blender
Of course.
and get a good look at how the leg's actually constructed.
Of course you did.
So here we go. So here is Gehrman's leg. You can see there's the version that's viewed in the Dark Souls model viewer, so you get like a nice look at it. And then you get just like the kind of topology of it where I've removed one of the legs of the trousers so you can see how far up it goes.
Yeah.
So Gehrman's prosthesis, for something you never ever actually see properly, like you just see the very end of it, it's weirdly detailed and weirdly complex. So then we were wondering, like, was this the player's prosthesis at one point? You can see in the Kanehurst art, the player character's prosthesis, it has these quite obvious straps on the side of it that are sticking out the side. The one that Gehrman's wearing, it doesn't, and it doesn't look like it would have unless they were a separate layer that went over the top. But if you look at the design of it, like, it looks like it's held on with laces that you feed through these eyelets. So there's now a pause when I'm like, so that's kind of where it ends. That's sort of where we have to leave it. If we sort of like break down what we've got 2 images from the art book of the player character with a prosthesis. So that's from. Like, we didn't make that. That's not a theory. That's just straight up in the concept art. There is an option for the player character to have the one leg. But it's only in 2 of them. It's not in the other ones. And like, I've got a lot of much older concept art, and it's not in those either, as far as I can tell. So it seems like it's just shown up in Kanehurst and Amygdala for some reason.
At what point did you have the third chords? Because I was thinking maybe instead of the third chord, just cut off your leg.
No, but that's what I'm thinking. Like, I'm wondering if there was not necessarily like a Dark Souls style covenant, but something associated with Kanehurst, because it's really notable that that's the art where you get the one leg. And then that's also the place with the removed one leg boss and the one leg statues. But like, there's no, that we've seen anyway, there's no like removed text or anything that's like remove leg, yes, no. Then we've got like the 2 times the player character is rendered with the prosthesis, it's 2 different prostheses. Like, one looks like just a pretty crude piece of wood, and the other one looks like it's got an ankle joint built into it somehow. And then we've got Gehrman, the character who looks like he was made out of 5 different bosses in a blender. He's got a prosthesis, and it looks like he probably has inherited the walk cycle from the one-legged knight. And you might think there, well, maybe that's the one-legged knight's prosthesis, but it's not. Because the one-legged knight's prosthesis, it's just a piece of wood going down. Whereas Gehrman's one, it's got like this leather and these eyelets and these places you could like actually strap it on. Like, it's a completely different design. We're wondering, was that the player character's one? But then if that's true, then there's 3 different prostheses that all look slightly different. The other thing to keep in mind is that the reference to beasthood creeping up the right leg, That's a DLC edition.
Mm.
As far as I can tell, all of the just piles and piles of data mine text that we have, no one ever mentions this. There's no references to removing your leg. There's no references to Beasthood creeping up the right leg. None of it's there.
Mm-hmm.
But it is there as a visual motif.
Mm-hmm.
And like again, the Beasthood creeps up the right leg thing being a late addition, that sort of contradicts what happens in the ending where you are captured by the moon presence, because that seems to be like Gehrman lost his leg because of the moon presence. But that's now overwritten to be Beasthood creeps up the right leg, and also in that ending it's the left leg that gets taken. So this is something that like it's like they're spinning plates trying to like sort of come up with explanations for why this is. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's kind of where we have to leave it, because there's no answer, there's no real definitive explanation for why this is. But it does look a lot like they were trialing the idea of the player character having one leg at one point,
Mm-hmm.
presumably like an optional thing. And like it's not clear if like that would have been all throughout the game or it would have been an optional thing. Perhaps it was like a story event that happened to stop you getting infected. I don't know. It's possible it was associated with Canehurst, because that's where you've got the one-legged knight statues. Like it may have been something Annalise could do to you. The other thing to point out with like the legs in Bloodborne is that when you heal, it's the right leg that you stab the vial into,
Uh-huh.
which is also the leg that's taken. So it's like, is that connected somehow? And yeah, it's just this interesting little detail that like appears to have been developed, but also it's sort of gone nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Sophie, do the outro.
that was What, Where, Why of Bloodborne, Clearing the Decks edition. That's why we're going to this really esoteric stuff. She's covered everything else. And that was the missing leg. Cindy, do you have anything to say?
Thank you, Emperor.
It's the wrong game.
And thank you, everyone.
I'm sure someone has made like Bloodborne is the Warhammer 40k timeline.
Can we do that? I'm
No.
up for it. Yeah.
No.
Yes. Come on.
No! Oh god. Warhammer 40k is darker than you think. The hidden gem that inspired Silent Hill. Fucking hate YouTube. Retrospective.